Welcome to Getting Sketchy Live, brought to you by thevirtualinstructor.com. And now, let's get sketchy.
Hello there, everyone. Matt here with thevirtualinstructor.com, and welcome to Getting Sketchy Live, the greatest live broadcast in all of YouTube. What we do here on Getting Sketchy is either myself or my good friend and fellow artist and art teacher, Ashley Hurst, tries to create a drawing for you within 45 minutes live for your viewing pleasure. And of course, we're going to sprinkle in a little bit of education as well. So I'd like to welcome everybody who's joining us tonight. I think I forgot to turn up some of that background music. We need a little bit of background music going on over here. Yep. And Ashley is sitting right over there. Ashley is going to be doing the drawing tonight. And this season we have been working with what we're calling the wheel, because it is a wheel. There's actually two wheels. The wheels
of possibilities.
Right. And each week we spin the wheel. Spin two of them, actually. One wheel has the mediums on there, and the other wheel has the subject matter. And last week, when I spun the wheel for Ashley, we ended up on pen and ink and animals. Mm-hmm. So tonight, Ashley's going to be doing a pen and ink drawing of an animal for you. And the photo reference that he's going to be working from is going to be up on the screen. But if you want to have the photo reference along with you, all you have to do is go to the YouTube channel. You might be watching this video, but you might not be on the YouTube channel. To go to the YouTube channel, just click on my face and that little small picture of my face down in the corner. And then you can click on the community tab there, and that's where you'll find the photo reference. So all the photo references from all the Getting Sketchy episodes we've done, which have all been recorded, and if you want to go back and watch those, you can. It can be found there on that community tab, of course. Now, if you are watching this live, like all of you who are watching this right now are, there's a chat box. Of course, you can post comments and questions, and during tonight's broadcast, we'll do our best to answer those comments and questions for you. If you do have something that's specifically directed at us, meaning me or Ashley, if you put that in all capital letters, not just one capital letter, but all capital letters, that'll help me see it amongst all the other ones, because I'm manning the chat box tonight. Ashley, you want to say anything to anybody?
I guess I hope you guys are excited about my snail drawing. I initially was looking at some different animals. I didn't want to do anything with fur and pen and ink because I didn't want to become kind of fur happy and us just make the same sort of repetitive mark throughout the show. So I chose something that had sort of a harder, wanted to choose an animal that had sort of a harder surface, a shell, and I chose a crab. And you're not looking at a crab because I had chosen a crab that Matt had previously drawn, actually. So it was a great image, but I hope you're excited about the snail. I think that the shell of the snail really obviously lends itself to mark making with lines. And so that's what we're going to be pretty much working with tonight. And I'm going to preview a new pen that I haven't used before. And we'll do a little bit of, or I plan to do just a little bit of ink wash right at the very end. You could also just use some really diluted black watercolor if you don't have any India ink. That's about it.
Awesome. And that crab drawing, that pen and ink crab drawing, is part of the course Subjects with Pen and Ink, which of course is part of our membership program over at thevirtualinstructor.com, which includes a variety of drawing and painting courses on a variety of subject matter and media, weekly live lessons. What we're doing here on YouTube is called Getting Sketchy. We just create quick sketches here, and it's looser. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit more fun. Not saying the live lessons aren't fun, but it's just a little bit more relaxed. Where the live lessons are a little bit more serious. And after tonight's broadcast, I'll be continuing the live lesson series that we started last week, where we are working with markers and colored pencils to draw a vintage race car. And all of our live lessons from the past, which go all the way back to 2012, are all recorded and stored in our vault over there. There are weekly critiques, which are part of the Members Minute, and there's also a year-long curriculum for visual arts teachers, and all of that is included with the membership program. If you want to learn more about the membership program, there's a link in the description below. Clicking on it will take you to a page where you can learn more about how you can start your free trial. Everyone starts out with a 7-day trial for free. And there's also a link below if you want to check out 3 of our course videos and ebooks for free. You can do that as well. That will also put you on our mailing list. So whenever we send out newsletters, you'll receive them and get updates and a lot of other lessons for free as well if you join that newsletter list. All right. Are the membership lessons on YouTube also Margie asked, no, the membership lessons are only for members, and there are actually way more lessons in the membership program than are available on YouTube. There are thousands of videos on the website. Each week, I put out at least 2 videos exclusively for members, and on YouTube, we do this live stream when we're in season, and occasionally I'll put out a video on YouTube. All right.
Is that all of the questions so far?
Someone, we got a super chat. We got a super chat.
All right. Thank you,
Let's
Alana.
Yay, everybody. Thank you, Alana. Just the past few weeks, because work was crazy often this week. Excited to be back, and we're excited to have you, of course, Alana. And I've seen Alana in the live lesson chat room before, too. So, all right. I think that's it, although it went scrolling really fast, but someone said that they're in the Subjects with Pen and Ink course right now, and they're enjoying it. So
awesome.
I missed that comment. But anyway, I think we're ready to get started. So we'll switch over to the main camera, and Ashley will go through the materials, and we'll get this party started.
That's right. All right, so of course you can see the snail in question on the left, and I'm going to be using these Molotov black liner permanent markers or pens. I haven't ever used these before, or actually not until just in the last few days. I was in Asheville, North Carolina over the weekend, and I want to give a shout out to Cheap Joe's Art Supplies. It's a fantastic art store. If you're ever in Asheville, you need to check it out. So that's where I picked these pens up, and this sweet jumbo-sized drawing pencil. So I'll be using that to get started. Here's the size of a normal pencil. So if you like drawing with jumbo pencils, like I do, usually I use first grader pencils from the school system, but these are actually Faber-Castell jumbo pencils.
So if you're wondering if Ashley's hands are actually that small, they're not. It's just the pencil.
Small hands. Small hands. All right, so the sizes listed are 0.05, 0.1, 0.2, and 0.4 millimeters, but I guess the big takeaway is that each size is supposed to be twice as big as the size that came before it. And I plan to use a few of these different sizes, so we'll have a variable line quality. So we're going to use a thicker pen and then the really, really fine pen too. Of course, you don't have to do that. You could stick with just one diameter pen, and you can maybe manipulate your line quality just with some pressure. I do have some acrylic India ink, and I'll be using just a drop of that, diluted in quite a bit of water to make a really light gray, just to apply a little bit probably in the background. We're still going to use lines in the background, but we'll probably use a little bit of this near the end. And so I do have a kneaded eraser, but hopefully I won't need it, so we'll see how that goes. All right, Matt, we're going to start with pencil, and I'll just talk a little bit while I lay in our subject, and then switch to pen as fast as we can.
So are you ready for the timer?
Well, let me unload my Molotov pens here.
Okay.
Get ready to throw them. Got to light my pens. Get ready to throw them. All right. I think we're ready.
He's ready.
I think we're ready.
The jumbo pencil, so I'm ready with the jumbo timer. Well, it's not really that jumbo.
All right, so I'm just going to use the edge of the picture plane to give me a few places to aim at. So I think the back of our snail shell will come to about this point, and it looks to me like it's just a little bit higher up than halfway in the picture plane. Let's see, the snail's shell comes over to the middle, or maybe just slightly past the middle. So somewhere in this area, somewhere between those two marks is probably the width of our shell. I'm going to go ahead and get started with the shell. I'm not thinking about it as having coils, but just more of a solid shape, and use some pretty straight lines. Just trying to think about the angle of these edges where the curvy part's not there.
So you're using very angular marks here in the beginning?
There we go. And kind of judge that, the proportion, the height, and the width of this before we try to make it look more like a shell. That way, if we have to make any changes, we're just moving these straight, sort of abstract lines around. All right, I'll go ahead and start working out a shape for our snail under our shell.
Terry is asking what size is this going to be. So I guess she's asking what size.
So the ratio is 4 to 5, and actually that's the same size in inches. So it's 4 inches tall and 5 inches wide. Keeping it simple. I'm still working with standard ratios this season. Okay, so it looks like our snail its bottom edge starts to change and move uphill, just a little, not directly under the right corner of the shell, but a little bit to the left of that. So we can use the shell to help us figure out how to place our snail. Now, I didn't put a mark for where to aim for the snail's little head, so maybe about here. We'll see how that looks. Of course, you know, accuracy is important, but this is not a portrait, or unless you know this snail personally. And so if your snail's a little bit different than this one, I would just embrace that. Look pretty good so far.
Brent Does Art says, I recommend this jumbo pencil for anyone with arthritis and to fight right hand fatigue. Or just to fight fatigue. Right hand fatigue. To fight hand fatigue. There's no right there at all.
Right.
Curtis says, what paper are you using?
Great question. I believe this is Strathmore drawing paper. It's an off-white, kind of a yellowish white, and it's 100 pound. So I stole it out of my son's brand new sketchbook from Cheap Joe's Art Supplies, and it's pretty nice. You know, I am going to do a very light wash on it. It's not really made for that, but because it's 100 pound, it'll do just fine.
But he says, do you say shell for the house of a snail? And yes, that is what we're referring to.
I hope so, because that's what I've been calling it, yeah. You may make the antenna a little beefier. You know, we're going to be working around it with pen, and sometimes the darkness of the pen can kind of crowd in, and the white that's left in between can start to we can lose a little bit of that. So if you want to exaggerate the thickness of some of these antennae, I think that's okay. It's kind of what's cool about this snail. Matt, did you catch snails when you were growing up?
No, I didn't catch them.
Oh, okay. Did you play with snails?
Not really.
Is that a weird question? Remember, I grew up in the country.
Right. Did you play with snails?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes, this is horrible to say.
I know what you're going to say.
It was the early 80s, you know. Things were different back then.
Are you talking about salt?
Yeah, I'm talking about the salt. Oh boy, we would find a snail and get so excited. And run in and grab the table salt.
So you could murder them.
So that we could dissolve them right before our very eyes. So this is my way of saying, I'm sorry, snails.
Grant says, would you guys be able to show us your live stream setup in a future video? It would be really cool to see. Yeah, it probably would be pretty cool to see. Maybe I'll do a video like that sometime in the future. It probably wouldn't be a live video, but maybe just a video on YouTube. There's a lot of equipment and a lot of things that you guys don't see. In fact, right now there are 4 cameras set up, although we're only using 3 tonight. There are also 8 lights. Probably too many lights. There are a couple of computers and 3 monitors. And then there's some switchboards and other things that are going on here. So it's rather complicated, but it hasn't always been that way. I think when I first started live streaming way back in 2012, it was originally just for members. I'm not really sure anybody watched me the first time I did a live stream, but it was very much more low tech. I think I had a camera that what are those cameras called that you only use on a computer?
The webcams.
The webcams, yeah. I had a webcam, and I think it was only one webcam overhead, and none of these live streaming softwares existed back then. I was using something that I don't think exists anymore. And like I said, I'm not really sure if anybody watched it or not. But anyway, things have changed quite a bit. Cynthia says, Matt, thank you for the quality of your videos. Now we know why. Oh, well, thank you so much.
It's all those cameras and lights.
Yeah. It's taken a while to build up to that, though.
Rome wasn't built in a day, right?
Yeah, but this definitely isn't Rome either.
All right, so we've taken our larger sort of polygon and tried to make it a little bit more of a spiral type shell just by knocking off some or adding some little negative corners in there. It's a little bit of overlap and happening in a couple places here, and maybe a little bit down here too, just because the shell is slightly turned towards us, even though the snail is pretty much in profile.
So, of course, really important for people to see and understand that Ashley started with very angular lines and then started making those lines curved instead of trying to mimic the curved lines that we see on the body of the shell of the snail.
From the very beginning, that would have been too much to manage. I needed to just think about its size first. All right. Now I am going to go ahead and draw in some of the pattern that's in our snail. He looks really complicated, but generally he has these squares that run along his bottom edge. They're squarish. I like to try to see the geometry in nature. It's part of what attracted me to this snail. The shell and then also his pattern are pretty geometric. Don't worry about counting those little squares. Of course, each of those squares has even more little divisions inside of it, so that'll give us a chance to use a thicker pen and a thinner pen in this snail's skin.
Now, I may have told you this before, but I'm not sure. What did one tree say to the other tree?
I don't know what.
Geometry?
I'm pretty sure you've told me that 2 or 3 times.
Oh, okay. Well.
And I can't remember jokes. I love them.
I obviously
cannot remember them, so you can tell them to me over and over, and I'll enjoy them each time. All right, let's see. Now, there is a pretty strong, dark line that we can sort of use as a landmark that runs through sort of linearly through the top part of our snail. And then, for me, the shapes of the bumps on this snail around that line are sort of like rice. They look like little pieces of rice to me. And then there's this weird area where it's really dark, and some of these seems like there's more space between some of these small bumps. And their shape is more irregular in this area compared to above and below it. So just trying to compare the shapes I'm using to the ones I've used before, and also their sizes. I'm going to be switching to the pen just a minute.
Well, Lori at least says that she's a math major, and the geometry joke never gets old. But thank you for that, Lori.
Okay. Now, I'm sure I'm using less bumps than what we see in our actual snail, but that's all right, as long as they have the character that we're looking for. All right, believe it's time to switch the pen, and we have 35 minutes to go, so 10 minutes for the pencil drawing. I'm going to go ahead and start with the 0.2. So it is, if you think of our sizes as small, medium, large, and extra large, this will be our large.
Okay, Paul asks, is a script better than a series bought individual? I'm not really sure what you're asking there, Paul. Are you referring to a pen? A script liner, maybe?
Maybe.
Is a script better than a series bought individual?
Like a series of pens?
I'm not real sure. Maybe if you can clarify that, Paul, we can answer that question for you.
I am doing some pretty much just outlining where I've been right now. If there's a hard edge to follow. If you want to keep a little bit of the angular quality of your shell, that's totally okay. Just it's a little bit of style. And my lines in places are pretty light or broken. just because I want, for the most part, I want these lines to sort of dissolve into our snail, and we'll be more purposeful near the end if we do want some distinct outlining, which we may actually need just for clarity. You know, when we're working with pen and line, there's a good chance that the harmony, because the meat in the medium is so tight that your lines can almost camouflage each other a little bit. So sometimes we need some bold line quality just for clarity, but we'll see. All right. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and actually start in this pattern because it's could be a little time consuming. I'm going to switch, and I'm going to leave the cap off, something I don't usually do, but I'm going to leave the cap off, and we're going to see if these in fact don't dry out as they're advertised. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to my 0.4. It's pretty big, and I'm going to use that over some of these lines that are square-ish, and try to define the pattern a little more clearly in our snail. We'll switch to a fine point pen for some of those little grooves and lines, or a finer tipped pen, I should say. These are all pretty fine for some of those lines inside of these shapes. You know, I really want to be careful not to outline solidly all the time, just so that we continue to have some variety in here in terms of our line quality, and hopefully that'll translate as the kind of variety that we often are used to feeling and seeing in nature. We do have our bold passage through the middle. I think I'll play that up and then work away from it for a little bit.
All right, Brent Does Art says, I think this one would look good in sepia colored ink. And Paul says, artist on a budget. Maybe he's following up, I think, his question, but I'm still not sure if we have clarification on what exactly he's asking. Alana says, the hardest part of the snail skin is keeping the orientation of the skin bumps correct. Still on the pencil drawing. Well, correct here is probably a loose term, because you're really probably just looking more at the pattern that's created and trying to create a similar pattern in your drawing. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. In fact, each one of those bumps that Ashley's drawing, I bet doesn't correlate exactly to a bump found on our friend the snail.
Just similar. You know, similar size, right. Similar shape. You know, I do hear you. I mean, there is sort of a slight uphill tilt to these, what I'm calling like rice pellets, like little pieces of rice up in here. So you might want to make sure that those continue to change at an angle. There's a little bit of angular change to the edge of those square parts too. But, right, but no one's going to see our snail when we're finished. So
right, Evan's got
close is good.
A comment. It's not in capital letters, but I read it.
Oh,
hey, Matt and Ashley, drawing looks great. I was wondering, other than traditional art, do either of you practice or enjoy other forms of art, i.e. theater or writing? I actually did not take art in high school at all. Instead, I took theater arts. And I was very much in theater arts. In fact, I played the Nutcracker. I was the Nutcracker my senior year. I wasn't dancing. It was a play form of the Nutcracker.
Oh,
and I also was in a competition.
Like to see that.
Several years of competition for acting, and actually won an award in one of those competitions. I was very big into acting and considered being an actor, actually. And I'm also a musician. I played the drums. I still play the drums. But I played in several bands and actually recorded a couple of albums. So, yes, I mean, in all different forms of art. I know Ashley plays instruments too. What else do you do there?
Well, I play the guitar just for fun, like around the house. You know, my son plays a little more seriously than I do. I used to play the trumpet, but I am not an actor. My brother is an actor, so I've been around the other arts. The performing arts in that way. I really have an appreciation for that because it's just something that I struggle to do myself. So, and then I'm an avid reader. I've written poetry for myself just for fun, but nothing really to share. So that's about it for me. I pretty much stick to the visual arts. All right, I'm going to go ahead and switch to. Great question, though. Thank you for that. And of course, who knows what the future holds?
Yes, actually,
I imagine
insinuating that he may be a different form of an artist one day.
That's right.
It's possible.
That's right. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and put some really fine little dark shading in between some of these marks, just in this area that's darkest. All right, just in that area. It's usually dark. It's kind of a deep little shadows between some of these pieces. It's really the only place that will work this way. We're going to hatch and cross hatch over the next half an hour.
Okay, Selena says, hey, new here. I was wondering if you guys did drawings with plain old crayons, because I still have no idea how to use them properly without my drawings looking like chicken scratch. We use sometimes materials that are similar to crayons, like oil pastels, for example. Those are similar to crayons. And then there's hard pastels, which are a form of pastels that we sometimes use that could be maybe considered similar to crayons. But as far as crayons like we normally think of, like wax crayons, we really don't do anything much with wax crayons. Not to say that they're not a viable art medium. Mm-hmm. They're just not a medium that we really explore much.
I had a student do portraits in crayon all year long last year, and they were pretty cool. And I was surprised at how sort of adept he got at using crayons and layering them. So I thought about trying to do more serious crayon drawings on myself.
Beth is asking, what size did you switch to?
Okay, so I am using the smallest size now. It's 0.05. 0.05, actually. The smallest size. Smallest one you got. I thought 4 was my smallest size, but apparently not.
Kizzy Cat
Must have
says,
misread that earlier.
If you had more time allotted, how long would this drawing take you? Just curious.
Well, it depends on the size. We're working really small, so it's probably about life size. So we're working maybe a little bit larger than life size. But if this were a larger painting, like a 24 by 36 painting, you could spend anywhere from 6 to 20 hours, just depending on how far you wanted to take the detail.
Kiyomi asked, do you use Neocolor too? Kiyomi, I am familiar with Neocolors, and I have used them before in conjunction with colored pencils. Never really used them on their own, but yes, that's very much a crayon-like medium. The interesting thing about the Neocolors is they're water-soluble. So even though they are wax crayons, somehow you can dilute them with water and make the material expand out and even make it look a little bit like watercolor.
All right, I've got my largest pen out now. I'm just going to start working in the shell. We're going to put about a couple thousand marks on here from this point forward. And I'm going to work with the large pen for a while, but then we'll switch to the fine pen and continue working here. There are some pretty broad darks right through the middle of the largest segment of our shell. So that's kind of what I'm really wanting to try to capture with this marker. I'm sorry, pen.
Sheila says they are like gouache crayons, and yeah, I think that's a pretty good comparison. I think that's a good descriptive way to describe them.
Now, while we work on these lines, I'm going to use the marks that are actually on the shell as a guide to direct me, but I don't want to forget that I'm shading, right? It's not just about, it's actually less about texture than it is about value all the time. So I want to keep squinting my eyes at my subject so I can really identify where sort of the light patches, medium patches, and dark patches are. And that's just to make sure I don't put too many lines or marks where the light patches need to be. So I don't have to worry about making a mistake in the darker areas, so that's what I'm working on first. I'm less likely to go too dark where it's nearly black, and then I can use those areas to help me help compare to the medium and the lighter areas where I need to keep it light, and make sure that as long as they don't match these darker areas, then I've done so, kept it light. Plan to do a little bit of cross hatching in here too. We think about the contour, the curviness of these shell, but these marks actually, some of them are relatively straight. They get a little more curvy up here near the top. So we could also shade the shell with marks that go perpendicular to these and still reveal the form of the shell. So I might use some marks that travel along the sort of the other axis of this shell for that reason. A lot of these marks I'm going to sort of start on the edge of a contour and work quickly away from it with a stroke that tapers off. That way I can control my edge pretty well. Just putting a few careful marks in here that I can use as a guide. So when I speed up, I'll know if I'm pretty much making marks the direction that I plan for them to go. All right.
Let's see. Desert Wind Design says, do you ever use old school dip pens? And yes, I definitely do. I use them quite a bit in the course subjects with pen and ink, and also in the course the Pen and Ink Experience, which are both part of the membership program, and also through several YouTube videos as well.
The dip pens give you a little bit more line quality. In fact, they're probably superior, but they do take a little bit longer. We're making a speed drawing here.
Yeah, you have to keep dipping the pen in the ink, obviously, thus the name, and as a result, the process is a little bit slower.
We can see underneath this shell just a little bit, and so I want to be careful that we only stay gray right around in this area under our shell.
I really like the line quality, the variety in line that you've got going on here.
Thank you.
Looking pretty sharp.
All right. I'll leave that alone for now. This light accent that runs through here is not white, and we want to eventually tone it down a little bit so that the highlights up here on the top are stronger, but we'll leave that pretty white for now. And I'm going to switch to our 0.05. That's right, our smallest pen, and just kind of keep working with some lines up across our shell for a little while. These lines are almost look gray because they're so thin.
Leonardo asks, hi, what medium is better for a good start in art? If you're just starting out, I think just basically a pen and a pencil is a good place to start.
Yeah.
Charcoal, I think, is a really good medium to learn drawing while you're also learning some of the concepts of painting.
When I was in art school, we pretty much started with charcoal, but I did have one professor that preferred and these are, first and second year drawing classes, that preferred us to work in graphite. But both of those are really forgiving, and that's why they're ideal for when you're starting out, but also for the seasoned professional. They're kind of like clay. You can add it and you can take it away. I'm switching back to my fatter pen because I'm working in a darker shadow again. And that'll just help us get more black in the artwork a little faster.
Okay, Sheila says, I have uni pens in both gray and brown. Have you ever used them? I haven't really used.
So.
I may have used the uni pens, maybe just playing around, but not in a finished drawing before.
Yeah, I'd say same for me. All right, back to the smallest pen. These lines are so faint, they don't really change the value much without a lot of hard work. But because they do build up the value a little slower, working with a pen, you're less likely to go too far too soon. All right, let me get into the center section a little bit, and then we'll bounce back down here into our snail's body. And just a little bit on the back end of our snail's shell. And we need to do a little bit of work in his antennae. It's pretty narrow in here, so shading is almost just stippling, almost just dots. Okay. Keep breaking up some of these shapes with our fine pen while we've got it in hand. I'm going to cross hatch across our snail a little bit. I'm going to switch to our 0.2 pen, sort of our medium size. And shade out and across our pattern a little bit. Work up the shadow that the shell casts on our snail. Okay, I think I'll use that same pen for to start the cast shadow that's underneath our snail. He does have a little bit of his underbelly here. I believe that's what that is. It's kind of a dark edge along his front. And for the shadow underneath him, I want to make sure that I'm using really, really horizontal marks. It's a really dark shadow, but it should probably taper off a little bit near the end. Cast shadows are a little bit lighter the farther they are from the subject that casts them. Again, I'm kind of making these marks away from the snail and letting them taper away. So they're softer or pointier on their tip, just by trying to go fast and with my mark and lifting my pen up as I go. Quick lifting stroke. All right, now there's still there's too much white in here, so I'm going to go ahead and take my 0.05. It's my smallest pen. The marks are so, again, they're so faint, they're so thin that they almost feel gray, and I'm just going to do some hatching across the whole snail. in places.
June asked,
except here.
June
where the highlight
asked,
is. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. June asked, curious how much stress it causes being watched as you draw, in addition to the time constraint.
You guys watching isn't too stressful. It's really the time constraint. If I could see your faces, I would probably be much more nervous. So I'm thankful for that Wizard of Oz sort of quality to working over a video. I feel kind of like I'm behind a curtain right now. But I keep looking at the timer, and it waits for no one.
For me, it sometimes depends on the medium and the subject matter that I'm dealing with. If it's something that I feel pretty confident about, I'm less nervous. If it's something that I'm a little apprehensive about, obviously I'm a little bit more nervous.
That's true. That's a lot of it too. That's true, Matt.
But he says, I still don't get it to find out the correct form for cast shadows. Any tip?
Like the shape of the shadow
is
sort of a distortion of the form, you know. In this case, the light's mostly coming from above, so the shadow is straight down. It's not really in front of very much, because it's not from behind the light, I mean. And so some of this shadow probably does wrap around because it looks like the light is slightly from the front on our shell. So cast shadows aren't always that important. I had a professor that said you could just ignore them and no one would notice, but in a drawing like this, I think it's important because I wanted my snail to feel like he is making contact with the surface.
Helen asked, what type of paper are you using? I think you said this was Strathmore.
This is Strathmore 100-pound drawing paper, and actually came out of a sketchbook.
Let's see.
All right, I used a very fine pen, and I'm continuing to do so just to go over my snail's body, just so he's doesn't have too much pure white down there. There are a lot of little white or very light speckles down there, and I will hopefully they'll hopefully do a better job once we do some wash in the background, and there's just less white everywhere.
Rebadal asks, why do you bounce around as you're drawing?
So I can compare values to one another. You know, I work on an area until I think it's dark enough, and then as the other areas become darker, that area, because of the relative nature of value, doesn't feel so dark anymore, and so it needs to be readdressed. So I don't always bounce around. Sometimes my drawings are more planned out, or if I've done a drawing that's a study and then I maybe execute a painting after that, I know I'm not going to be making too many sort of design decisions, and so I'll bounce around a little bit less. But I was actually taught to do that. I was taught academically to sort of let my whole picture develop gradually together instead of finishing one area before moving on. So that's not an endorsement of a way to make art, being one better than another, just a way I was taught.
Okay, Paul asked, have either of you developed headaches from working with visual art?
I think so. And it's mostly, I think it's from fumes from a kiln occasionally.
Yeah, I've noticed that when I work with pastels, I do get sinusy type headache, and it sometimes can last well into the next day too. So I've started wearing a mask when I work with pastels. I would have never thought to do that if it weren't for COVID.
Yeah, and now the masks are everywhere, and I've been wearing one when I mow the yard. I think that helps, but definitely with the pastels. All right, I have put in some strokes that follow sort of the other direction, the contour of our shell, just a little bit, just for some variety up here. Just a few strokes up there that are pretty much perpendicular to the originals. Let's see, we've got 9 minutes left, so probably ought to address the background some so that we could possibly come back to the snail should we need to do so. So I'm a little nervous about the background. We're going to kind of make it up. We could ruin this. So we'll take a picture real quick in case we ruin it from here on out. Okay, I'm looking for my fat pen. The 0.4, I believe, is what I'm using for my larger larger liner, and I'm going to do some hatching back here in patches, just kind of around the lighter areas like the top of the shell and the antennae, just to help them stand out from the white background a little bit. I want to make sure I'm using the antenna kind of go this way, so I'm not going to use a stroke that goes this way, okay, for my cross hatching. And that way, hopefully these antennae won't disappear into the lines of the background. So if you see me making strokes this way, type stop in capital letters. No, I'm just kidding. I won't forget. I won't forget. All right,
Buddy
here
says,
goes.
Matt, you can even learn from COVID, and that's true. And let's see. Oh, Paul said something, but then removed it. Buddy says, wow, Ashley, this didn't occur to me, but these crossed strokes really make a difference.
Probably she may be talking about the ones up here. Maybe
Yeah.
just a little bit, just for some variety.
And they still flow over the cross contours. Of
Right.
that
They're
form.
still meant to help us better understand the shell.
Peter says, I love this drawing. It reminds me of Mark's turtle, which I did, and it's one of my favorites. I'm not sure who Mark is. Maybe he's another YouTuber.
I thought about doing a turtle. And that was in the running. You know,
You did a search for slow animals.
and animals with shells. That's what I was really looking at. I looked at some beetles, looked at the rhinoceros beetle. I looked at the June bug. I loved catching June bugs when I was a kid. And
Catching June bugs, pouring salt on snails.
I'm telling you. Those were the days. Of course, you know what we did with the June bugs.
You squash them.
Now, see, I've got that antenna, and it's going the same direction as
You
these
know
darn
what
marks.
is that what you did with June bugs? You squashed them?
No. Ideally, you would tie a string to their foot,
Yeah.
and then let it fly away, and it would fly around like a balloon. It would fly over your head, and you could hold onto its string.
Did that ever work?
Yeah.
You actually tied a string around a June bug's leg.
Yes, but it is hard because it's small. And so there is another way. Now, again, this is something we did in the country. Mm-hmm. We would take our fishing poles and run the hook through their abdomen, and then you just let them fly away, and then you could reel them back in for a while.
They would live?
For a while.
That is terrible.
I know. It's terrible. Children
all I know
aren't
about
the people they're going to become.
With June bugs, we had them so bad, we would put little catchers out in our yard.
Oh, yeah. And they would fill up.
They would fill up, and then they would turn to like juice.
Oh,
You know?
Oh, that's awful. That's awful. Maybe you're supposed to change them before they...
Peter clarifies.
Putrefy.
He when he said Mark, he meant Matt. So yeah,
okay.
I know what turtle you're talking about. You're talking about the sea turtle from the Live Lesson series. Yeah. June says, I love ink. So glad you're doing animals and ink. My favorite, learning so much. Good. Very good.
Yeah, and animals is not a subject that I usually choose to draw. So the wheel has been great for me because it's forced me out of my comfort zone a little bit. I did some animals in my barnyard series, and that was sort of for the same reason. So it was fun trying to match a medium with an animal.
So on a slightly different note, what do you think about those pens? Are you enjoying them?
I like them so far.
I think they look really
I like
great.
them. Yeah, I do too. I have left the cap off of one of them, and after I picked it back up, it did work. I didn't leave it off for 90 minutes like the package says you can. And maybe, can you do that with all pens? And they're just advertising
I don't know.
a
Maybe
quality.
they're taking a shared characteristic and
Right.
marketing it.
That's what I'm wondering. So I'm going to have to test that with some Sakuras I have at home and see if they work after 90 minutes of having the cap off. So, I mean, I'm not really doing a product review. I'm just curious, just curiosity.
Looks like Daly said, Ashley, we would tie the thread around the neck of the beetle, I guess.
Oh, okay. I'll have to try that.
Yeah.
Next time
You've given him ideas now.
Right, next time I'm flying beetles, so. All right. Now, usually with a background like this, I spend some time just looking at it, and deciding where to put the next patches, but we don't have that kind of time, so just got to make a decision.
Now, are you going to make the line around the outer contour thicker, or are you going to do the ink
Maybe.
wash?
I'm going to do the ink wash first, a little bit of ink wash first, and then possibly put in some dark accents. And I know there's only 3 minutes left, but I'm ignoring that. Just trying to stick to the plan. I thought about making all these lines just horizontal in one direction so it looked like the snail was moving really fast. All right. Let's see if we can bring it together a little bit and hopefully help the light on the snail to stand out with some ink wash. So I'm going to go ahead. I have a dish of a little bit of water, and I'm going to use a really, really small amount of India ink and hopefully not spill it all over myself or the drawing. Okay, I'm stirring now. More ink. Gotta just find a ratio for a very light gray.
Okay, some people were commenting that the initial lines you put made the snail look like it was in motion. But Catherine says now that the background lines are crosshatched, the snail looks stationary again.
Yeah, when they were all traveling in one direction, it gives that impression of movement.
Paul says, shame, shame. Ashley, a guy that loves cats tying the tails of bugs.
I would never harm a cat. Ever.
Brett Does Art has been patiently waiting for the wash.
All right, here it comes. Just a little bit. It's weak, but we just want to get rid of some of that pure white right around the shell and the antenna.
Bring that snail back out. Make him pop out again.
And it's okay if you have some gaps in there, just like some of our, it's kind of patchy back there anyway as we get further away from the snail. I'm using a square brush, and you can, see that in the marks. Kind of impart some square edges in here. I thought that would go well with hatching and cross hatching because we end up with all these little squares in there where the lines crisscross over one another, especially in the background. Make it to the edge of my picture plane just in a couple of spots.
Terry says that wash makes a huge difference.
Oh, yeah.
And Helen says, are the pins waterproof? And I think the pins
they're holding up pretty well.
They are holding up pretty well.
They're water resistant, but they are listed as pigment and indelible and being indelible ink. They may be softening a little bit. I did a test with them earlier in the day, just across some lines that I had just put down, and they look like they softened some. But it may be also because these pins are supposed to resist drying out, that they might need to just sit a little while before we do too much wash work over them. All right, now let's see. Just a little bit of dry brush in the bottom. And I guess that's it. Time's up. Time's up.
Pat says, wow, I wasn't able to participate, but I love the end result. Fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. I do too. It really, really needed the wash to pull it away from the lines in the background. So hopefully if you're using an ink wash or a little bit of watercolor wash, you'll see your snail kind of pop out at the end as well.
And Judy says, impressive. Thank
you, Judy. I would like to keep working on this one. There's more to do, but I think I have to be careful. It is a little wet right now, but I would like to put in just a few
A little bit of a thicker line to bring out the snail.
Yeah, just in a few spots. Probably should let it sit and look at it a little while, but we'll be back next week to look at my snail and see what changes. No, I'm just kidding. All right. I believe that's it, Matt.
All right. Well, I think you did a fantastic job. A slow animal done in a quick period of time. Very good. Brent Does Art says he's going to use a graphite wash maybe for the background.
Yeah, that would look good too.
I didn't even start the background, but I'm happy with my snail. Thanks, Ashley. Edie says you guys have intimidating skill. I wonder if I can ever get as good. Yeah, absolutely you can. The more you practice, the better you're going to get. Margaret says, Barb asked if you could use powdered graphite. Yeah. For this drawing, you can use whatever medium you want. We're just, Ashley's using pen and ink.
Yeah, and in the background you could too.
June says fabulous. Michelle says fantastic. Rebottle. I'm sorry. Says thanks, Ashley. June says fabulous. All right. Beth says thank you again. So lots of great comments.
Thank you all for tuning in and for following along. And I hope you learned something, or at least were entertained.
June says fabulous again. And Norlene says, are you starting a new live tonight on the Virtual Instructor? We're actually continuing the one that we started last week. It started last week, and tonight we're going to be continuing that right after we're done here. So hopefully I'll see some
and I am really looking forward to seeing how that drawing develops. So I'm a big fan.
Of the vintage race car.
Yeah, it's neat. It's a neat picture.
All right. You know what time it is now?
Oh, yeah.
It is time to see what I am going to be drawing.
Let's break out the wheels.
And that's next week. So Ashley's going to be spinning the wheels here.
I'm disconnecting our snail from the table. There he goes. So what would you like for me to spin first, Matt? The medium or the subject? We only have 3 media options left. Graphite,
I think
pastel,
this might be my
and
last
charcoal.
drawing of the season.
Oh, you're right.
Is that right?
Yeah, you're right. I think so. We've each done 4 now.
And let's see. We've done pastels once, but not charcoal or graphite at all.
No. I did a graphite drawing.
Okay.
I think I started with a graphite drawing.
We haven't had architecture, right?
We haven't had architecture at all, and we haven't had charcoal at all. So those, I hope you get charcoal
and
architecture.
any of the other ones, of course, have been done. And the ones with the X, we have done. Let's do the subject first.
All right.
So Ashley's going to spin for the subject to see what I will be drawing next week. And let's see what it is here. Just imagine dramatic music playing in your head.
The Wheel of Despair.
And, of course, it's
Still Life.
We'll try it again.
Here we go.
Probably be landscape this time. I'm predicting landscape. And
Still Life again.
All right, maybe turn it a little bit before you spin it. Turn it. There we go.
Okay,
now,
I'm going to start it on animals and see what happens.
Margaret says the season went by so fast. Well, it's not over yet. I have one more drawing.
3.
Ashley has one more drawing, and then we have our review episode. Look at that landscape. I guess the waiting really works. I'll remember this when I go to Las Vegas.
I spend it more.
Right.
I spend it more gently that time.
Paul says, do I go to the Virtual Instructor main site for the live lesson or YouTube? Yeah, the live lessons are not on YouTube. You have to be a member of the website. So you have to go to the website and log in with your account in order to access the live sessions.
All right.
A vehicle.
We have a winner.
Right.
Vehicle.
A vehicle.
Finally, because my spinning muscles were getting tired.
All right, so I will be doing a vehicle next week, and
it's going to be in charcoal, graphite, or pastel.
All right, well,
I hope it's pastel.
I'll take pastels. In fact, I kind of want it to be pastels. I'd love to do an oil pastel drawing.
All right, here we go.
Here, come on, pastels.
You get your wish?
Come on, give me pastels. And
charcoal vehicle.
No.
All right, a charcoal vehicle.
No. That is not the combination I wanted, but you know what? I will still be able to get through it and do a good drawing, hopefully.
Yep. Well, I tell you, I was pretty nervous with the colored pencil people.
Yeah, but you
and
pulled
that worked
one
out
off.
okay,
Yeah,
you know.
that one
So
worked out
there's
really
a
great.
solution to all of these inside of 45 minutes. So we'll all be glad to see what you come up with for next week.
All right. Well, there you have it. Next week, I'll be doing a charcoal drawing of some type of vehicle. And I'll remind you that a boat is a vehicle. But we'll see. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to be doing a boat or anything. But I'll probably be using both black and white charcoal. I can guarantee you that. And I'll probably be working on gray paper. Ashley, do you have anything else to say here to the folks?
I don't think so. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. And if you didn't finish your snail, keep at it. You can move as slowly as you want to.
You can work at a snail's pace.
At a snail's pace, right? And we'll see you here next week.
Absolutely. All right, guys, don't forget to like this video if you liked it, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you subscribe, you'll get a notification whenever we go live. This is season 8 of Getting Sketchy. We'll do season 9 after we take a few weeks of a break. So we've got 3 more episodes this season, so I hope that you'll join us for that. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, you won't know exactly when we start, but it's 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Wednesday. And what else? You can check out the membership program too, which is where we're heading to next. We're actually not leaving or going anywhere, but our next broadcast is going to be on the website over at thevirtualinstructor.com. Thanks again for joining us. I know you guys are joining us from all over the world at all different time zones. Some of you are probably sleepy right now, probably not as sleepy as I am. But probably sleepy, and we appreciate it. We appreciate you being here with us, and we appreciate doing this for you, or we like doing this for you. So that's enough talking from me.
It's a blast.
Good night, everybody.